Now let's look at a few of the ways that we can get 3D models into our scenes in 3ds Max. So here we just have a blank scene. So now we'd like to create some 3D models here. So how do we do that? Well, initially we'll go to the Create panel right over here. It's the far left button. And then right here we have a button for geometry. So that's what we're going to concentrate on. And then we have a couple of options in here for what we can actually create. So the top options are going to be what we're going to concentrate on are standard primitives and extended primitives. Okay, and then we have a whole host of other objects types that we can create. But let's take a look at standard primitives first. Now, if you see the word primitives in this context, we're just talking about very simple shapes. And a lot of times when you're building models, you'll think about, well, what is the model I'm creating? What does it kind of look like? What's the base shape of it? So if you're creating an arm, maybe you think, okay, that arm is very cylindrical shape. So a lot of times you can actually start with these primitive shapes and then modify those to create your finished model, combine them in different ways and so forth. But it's often a good practice to bring in some sort of a primitive shape to begin modeling from, depending on the workflow that you like to use. So let's say we want to bring in a model. So we've got the different object types down here listed. And so we will create, let's say, a torus. So click on torus. As we move down here, we have a rollout for the parameters. So different values for radius 1, 2, rotation, twist, all of these values. But if you just want to click and drag, you can create it out here in our viewport. And so I'll just click and drag that out. And then as I release the mouse button, you can see that I'm now changing the radius 1 and 2 here. I'll click again, and then I'm done. Now once you're done creating the model here in the viewport, these parameters here in our Create panel aren't going to matter anymore. They're only going to apply to the next thing that's created. But we can still modify the values for this if we go to the Modify panel. So we'll move over one to Modify. Now you can see we have our torus listed here with the name of it, torus 001. And then we have the same rollout here with parameters, but now we can change these interactively, seeing the effect on our model. So we can change radius 1, radius 2, we can change the rotation. Okay, we can change the twist, give it a little bit of a twist there. Number of segments, so we can change the resolution. So as long as this is a primitive here, we can do and change all of these different parameters on this. We can turn on slice, and then if we want to just have part of the torus, we can do that. So very powerful in terms of the different parameters that we can change here. We can turn that off if we want. Look at the smoothing. So a lot of different options for us. And we can go back and create and add different objects to our scene. So if we want to create a cylinder, we can just drag out the radius and then pull up the height. Okay, and then you can see it. We can go back and modify that. Okay, change the height, change the number of segments. Okay, and so those are the standard primitives. We also have extended primitives, which have a little bit of a different shape. Okay, so let's say we have maybe an oil tank. We draw this out. You can see we can draw out that sort of radius and then pull up the height and then click and drag to make that sort of shape there, and then change those values in here to get a little bit different shape. So kind of a cylinder with a half circle on top. Okay, and you can change the number of segments. So think of these extended primitives as a little bit more complex than the basic primitives. Okay, you're going to get a little bit different shape, have a little bit more control over the shape. So depending on what you want, you can use the standard primitives or extended primitives. Okay, now those are going to be some of the basic ways of creating models here. Okay, or just bringing them in. Now you're going to have to do a lot of manipulation to get to the final result, but the key is starting out with something that is kind of close to what you want. Okay, and there are other more complex ways of creating geometry. You can do it polygon by polygon in that case, or you can use curves to create geometry. But the primitives are going to be the quickest and easiest way to do that. Okay, we can also bring in geometry that we've created already, and we can do that in a few different ways. So if we go up here to import, take a look at this. So we have import and merge. So if we go to import, and let's just navigate to our, I believe our export folder in our 3ds Max project with your project files, and you'll see that we have two different types of objects here. So the first one is an FBX file, and this one is actually an OBJ file. So look at these two types here. We also have a number of different file types that we can import, but these are two very popular ones. So we'll look at FBX. We'll go ahead and choose the chair and go ahead and open that up. Okay, it's going to give you a lot of information, tell you where that actually is, the version, FBX that it's using, so forth. We'll just say OK to all of that. Okay, and now if we go ahead and delete these primitives that we created, you can see that we now have a chair loaded up. Okay, it's made of multiple pieces here. And we can also, if you go to our modify panel, you can see the names of these. So this is called pillow, this is called seat. We also have up here over here, so the schematic view. And so if we open this up, we can actually see entries for our different pieces. Okay, so in this case you can see we have different objects for each of these pieces of our chair. Okay, and if you want to get rid of any of those, you can select those and delete them. We can also go ahead and import our OBJ. So it's going to be this file. You can see we get a little bit different option here, our OBJ import options. You want to make sure that you have the object selected that you want to bring in. We also have presets. If you're bringing in objects from different applications, you can choose a preset that will change these settings based on the application that you're using. So we'll go ahead and import that, and there you can see our chair has come in as well. Okay, now we can also merge. So if we're working with for instance, another 3ds Max scene file, and we want to actually merge that file in, instead of importing, we can go merge, and then let's choose our chair in our scenes folder, and this will allow us to decide what we want to actually bring in from that scene. So in this case, I'll choose everything because the only thing in there is a chair. We'll say OK to that, and then I'll actually merge that in. You can see that we actually have, on this one, we have a material located on here. Okay, now looking at this, you can see that we can see this orange wireframe on all of these models. And so there are different ways to display the models that we're working with here in 3ds Max, including having this wireframe off, and then also turning it, having it on and turning it off so we can't see it. So that's maybe a little bit more what you're thinking of. So let's go ahead and in the next lesson explore some of the ways that we can look at our models a little bit differently, including turning off and on our what's called our edged faces. So we'll take a look at that in the next lesson.